He's a longtime member of AAI. He handles their technical committee chair, and he does a lot of work, maintenance on the 24-inch telescope. He's given presentations here before, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Jim. Go ahead, take it away.
Okie dokie. Well, I had an opportunity this summer to go visit my sister for the first time in 20 years in Idaho, so that prompted a few little visits to a few nice little scenery and nice remote sites there. Most of it is going to be about Bruneau Dunes State Park, which is a state park with a big campground that has an astronomical observatory associated with it. And it's also got the tallest dunes in the Americas that are freestanding. Over on here, you can see the original observatory. It's a very strange structure, a cylinder with a canted, truncated top. And here's a lake there. Here's a picture of the dunes. Here's a nice shot of the small dune in the foreground and the big dunes in the background. So it's located about an hour south of Boise. It's at a decent elevation, has good campsites, but only 2 cabins, but we'll get to that later. The observatory there has been around for a while. They have a nice program beforehand. As the night's getting dark, they open up the visitor center. They have a nice little pre-show there where they talk about what they're going to do and have a lot of like NASA advertisements for upcoming missions and things like that. And then a little observatory tour. But they don't charge for that. But if you want to go viewing for the evening, it's $5 a head, children under 5 free. So unfortunately, the evening we were there, it was clouded out. We got a nice observatory tour, and then couldn't see anything, so we walked back to the campsite. More on that later. But the legislation was passed in 1966 in Idaho to acquire land from the Bureau of Land Management for the park. So they started the camp as a campground first in 1967 as they started doing improvements, and officially opened up as the state park in 1970. And the Boise Astronomical Society was very instrumental to bringing astronomy to Bruneau Dunes State Park. They hosted the first Idaho Star Party there in 1987, and it's been going annually ever since. And images of the Star Party are very hard to find on the internet. So I actually had to join the Boise Astronomical Society's Facebook page, which is a private group, and ask someone for permission to post some photos that they had taken from this year's event. So this is a nice image of the typical nice dark skies they have there. You can see the Milky Way rising up here as the evening's getting darker. It's already getting closer to setting in the west because this is September 15th. Could those of you at home please mute yourselves, please? I'm getting some feedback. Okay, so here's another view looking out of a lit pavilion lit with red lights towards the Milky Way. There you can see an observer here on his binoculars. Over here, checking it out. And here's the same view from the side. It's very, very dark skies there. There's no towns around. It's like an hour south of Boise. That's the only real light dome in the area, and there's a lot of hills in between. Here's the campground itself. Another nice shot. Milky Way boiling out of the teapot. Sagittarius is already kind of canted on its side going down. And another nice shot of the campground at twilight. You got the Pleiades coming up here. I'm not sure what this is, if this is a planet. And like most star parties, they give talks during the day and presentations. They had another one about the Ross telescope in Ireland, and I think this one's about spectroscopy or something. So other park activities include fishing, birding, hiking, equestrian trails and camping. The park is rimmed by 9 miles of equestrian trails, and they have like 6 or 7 miles of hiking trails that go along the crest of the dunes and other places. Plenty of campsites, but only 2 cabins, but both have very effective air conditioning, as we found out. My sister booked us a cabin 6 months in advance when I suggested that we go to the park, and I'm very thankful that she did. So here's the 2 cabins. It's a blow up of a thumbnail, so it's not very clear, but this is the cabin we were staying in. One of them is handicapped accessible with a ramp, and the other one is not. That's the only differences. But the interior is very sparse. It's got bunk beds, full size and twin up top, and this futon pulls out into another full size bed. So theoretically, you could sleep 5 people in here. But my sister has a little Mercedes Sprinter camper. She stayed out in there while just me and my daughter stayed in here. So a little bit about the dunes. They are the tallest single structure sand dunes in North America, 470 feet in height. And they're very unique in that they formed at the center of the basin they're located in instead of near the edges. And they think most of the sand in there arrived from the Bonneville flood event. And with the prevailing winds blowing partly from one direction and partly from the other, that's what keeps the dunes sort of self-centered and stable in the center of the area there. Here you can see an aerial shot from Google Maps. Right here is what they call Eagle Bend. That's the bowl that the park is in. And here are the dunes right here. The observatory is located right about here next to the small pond and the small dune. So there's the Snake River Birds of Prey area is down here. The Snake River is running right across here. And this is a little unique thing about the geology of the area. Like this reservoir up here was man-made and dammed up as a part of a tributary of a river. When they started in the 1950s building reservoirs in the area to help with irrigation for farming and stuff, it raised the ground table of the water. And actually lakes like these started to pop up out of nowhere where it was formerly dry areas. So those lakes were not there before the 1950s. I think they actually appeared somewhere in the early 60s. So this is a map of the park itself. For some reason, their maps are published with north off to the left side. So this way is, quote, up. So you got the road coming in and a nice visitor center. And there's one campground up here. That's the original campground they built. The new campgrounds up here where they have the Star Party and the pavilion are located right here. And there's a very short little 0.3 mile walkway to where the actual observatory is here. And the small dune is on this side and the big dunes are over here. All these red lines are hiking trails and the blue lines around the perimeter of the park here, that's the equestrian trails. So you notice the hiking trails, they go like right along the crest of the dune. And here's a more of a close-up of the observatory area. So the fact that the dunes are self-sustaining allows for a very unique sport you don't find too many areas, sandboarding. So they actually rent sandboards at the interpretive center in 2 styles. They have these stand-up ones and these ones where you can kind of sit down on here, hold on for dear life with your feet up here. But they stop rentals when it gets over 80 degrees because the sand gets incredibly hot. And otherwise, if you're tumbling down that hot sand, you can get quite a burn on you. So, or if you don't want to rent them, you can bring your own way down if you want. Here's a couple kids on the little snow saucer sleds or sliding on their behinds even. So, okay, let's get back to the observatory located there. The original observatory was started construction in 1998, and it's a very unique design, as you saw before, a truncated cylinder. And it enclosed a 25-inch F5 Obsession Dobsonian that the Boise Astronomical Association had donated to the institution. So here's the beginning of construction. I didn't realize before I saw these construction photos that the underlying layer is actually some wood products, some engineered wood. So they're supporting the outer cylinder there with the props and getting everything all set up. And here they're actually putting wood beams over what will become the slit. And the whole thing was sheathed in metal sheathing after it was all done. And here you can see the tip of the Dobsonian up by the slit. So this whole structure rotates around on a rotating mechanism on the ground. They had some heavy other equipment they can bring outside for observing. They had a nice interpretive center by the observatory. And here is the obsession in place with its f5 at 25 inches. It's a very tall scope. And as you can see on the bottom, it's sitting on a Ponset drive, so you don't have to keep changing the pointing. It's sort of self-tracking. Another view of the interior of the dome. They got everything all painted black with little artwork in there. I unfortunately was not inside this dome for reasons I will get to later in the talk. Another, the park ranger giving a little interpretive talk about the dome. Here's the dome at night and a nice view of the Milky Way through this slit. So they also added a human sundial. A local Girl Scout troop did this as a project in 2015. And as you can see by the person's watch, it's right on the money. So the day we were there was clouded. That's my daughter mugging for the camera there. So didn't quite work that day. As you can see, it needs a little bit of a repaint in a few areas. It's been a few years since 2015. And here's the little thing saying what troop constructed it, etc. Oops, let me go back one here. Okay, so in 2018, the entire central Idaho region, including Bruneau Dunes, was named the nation's very first dark sky preserve by the International Dark Sky Association. Oops, I forgot an S there. This led the way for state funding to construct the new observatory, which broke ground last year. And construction was undertaken by a company called Seawest Observatories, which has been building observatories around the world since 1977. It was completed in 2023, dedicated this past June 1st, open to the public on June 16th for its first show, so they could train operators and staff, etc. So here's the front page from the little blurb on the on Seawest's website. You can learn more about the observatory there. They have 3 very nice videos there that show the construction of the observatory, integration of all the cameras and equipment on the telescope, and the last one talks about installing the viewing periscope and opening day. So this is groundbreaking. Some construction photos. I'm not going to dwell on these too long. Here's the old observatory down here and the interpretive center they have, where they have a very large auditorium that can seat, I think there's 2 separate auditoriums. Each of them can seat like 60 people, and you can broadcast a presentation from one to the other if they have overflow. Putting together the Ash Dome. It's a 20.6 foot dome, a little bigger than our domes, which are 18.5 foot. There's locating it on top, uncrating the PlaneWave CDK700, a 27-inch corrected Dole Kirkham they're putting in there, lowering it in, lowering in the secondary cage, screwing everything all together. And here's the observatory by night, still with some scaffolding around the outside. They're still doing some trim work, installing electrics, and a nice sunset shot. And after construction, I had a nice double rainbow to hit everything off. So unfortunately, due to years of wear and tear in the sandy environment, the old dome, as you notice, rotated right at ground level. So sand must have been getting into the mechanism. The whole dome stopped rotating a few months before the new scope was dedicated. So they had to, in the interim, move that big 25-inch scope outside for their public viewing nights. So it's a great effort to do it. So they're temporarily not going to be using the 25-inch scope now that they have the other dome running, but they will be repairing the old dome and getting it into commission as soon as they get enough funding to do so. So here's the 25-inch obsession set up in the central area there for public viewing in the interim. They have a couple piers here. As you can see, they have, I think, a 10-inch mead set up on this pier over here. They have another 8-inch Dobsonian they bring out on public nights, and a couple small telescopes as well. Another nighttime picture of observing. Whoops. Let's go back to that. You can see the big ladder up here and the typical red lights coming around. I don't think I included it. They have like a really old, like military binoculars that they used to bring out on public nights. And I should add, while they're doing the observatory tours on, when it's sunny out, they have a small solar telescope they bring out so you can view the sun at least before the observatory opens. Okay, notice from the maps the proximity of the observatory to that small lake. Mosquitoes are really bad at dusk as the sun starts setting there. They're not so bad in the campground because that's a little farther away, but at the observatory itself, wear bug spray. They are killer. So what's inside that shiny ash dome? Well, as I mentioned before, they have that new CDK700, and onto it is the Optec Perseus four-port instrument selector. They have 2 ports occupied right now, one by a wide field, a big chip 6200 MC Pro camera, and the other one's a 533 MC Pro, same camera we bought for our RASA 8 as a more of a planetary narrow field camera. And it's got the PlaneWave's integrated rotator focuser because it's an LTAS mount. You need the rotator if you're going to be doing long-term astrophotography. And there is a custom designed periscope to bring the eyepiece to ADA wheelchair accessible height. So here are some photos that I took while I was there. You can see the periscope here. It actually uses a pair of Teleview NP101 APO refractors, one up at the top and one at the bottom, to collimate the light beam and bring it down to observer level. Now, my guess is with all the external, internal reflections here and the extra 2 mirrors here, that the light grasp of this 27-inch might be actually a little less than the 25-inch Dob, but it's still a very nice instrument. Here's a view of the top. You can see the instrument cluster over here. And in this view over here is up the upper area, the periscope here. So here's a close-up view. This is from CWest's website. At installation, they only had the 6200 camera installed, and they actually have an off-axis guider attached to that. I'm not sure if they installed a guider on this one too, but you can't use both ports simultaneously because inside this instrument, there's a diagonal mirror that you can rotate to point the light path at either of the 4 ports. So they're planning on putting another camera on here in the future, but what goes there remains to be seen. Here's another view of the side of the instrument cluster. And here's a nice view of the whole assembly. Now, they have the inside of the dome air conditioned. It's mostly the bottom that stays cool. You know, you're in a hot desert environment. They don't want the inside of the dome to get too hot during the day because when they open up at night, they want the telescope to be at the ambient temperature of the outside air. They don't want it to be superheated during the day. So that's why they keep the air conditioning on in here. They also have a very nice classroom. The LED lights are color changeable. They did this blue light thing for effect. I know blue lights are not what you want to see in an observatory. So they have 3 65-inch 4K LED screens around where they can broadcast what's coming off the cameras to the classroom. This was before they filled it all up with chairs. It's about the size of a room of this classroom right here, actually. And here you're getting into the control room area where they actually operate the computer. Everything's all remotely operated, fully integrated. You can operate it from anywhere in the world if you get permissions. And a close-up view of the control panel. Everything's run off this little keyboard here. So some first light images after they installed the telescope. They did a nice image of what I can only assume is M33. This one is definitely the Hercules cluster. I saw them announcing this on one of the videos they shot. Nice view of M51. And nice view of the Ring Nebula.
That was M101.
M101, okay. So future plans, they want to install a monochrome science camera, and they're going to be taking research proposals from local institutions and et cetera, because they are only open to the public on Fridays and Saturdays. They want to be able to utilize the instrument on other times as well. And they're also, the initial plans were always to install a projection system on the interior of the dome so they could use that as a planetarium as well, I guess on cloudy nights, et cetera, or for daytime instructional use. So that's it for that observatory. We're here at the Visitors Center where they have this nice signpost pointing to all the state parks in the area. And our next stop is going to be this one here, Three Island Crossing, which is 26 miles away. We actually stopped there as a lunch stop on the way down. So it's an infamous ford on the Snake River along the Oregon Trail. That park has very nice campgrounds on the banks of the Snake River, good fishing, hiking trails, a really nice visitor center, and good displays about the Oregon Trail through Idaho. Here's a view of some of the interpretive center items. You know, they have the usual wagon train mock-ups with the equipment, good route maps, and reasons why people took certain routes. There was a ferry there which transported a lot of the wagons across, and they actually have one of the old ferry boats sitting on dry land up there still. And here's my sister and daughter with right outside the building, mugging for the camera. Nice little group shot of us with my selfie arm sticking out. And we happen to catch a nice quail sitting in the brush outside the building. So the Snake River is back here, and this sloping path up here is actually the Oregon Trail on the other side of the river. Also, a site not to miss when you're in Boise is the World Center for Birds of Prey that was started by the Peregrine Fund. They breed the California condors there for re-release into the wild. I think they release them both in California and in the Grand Canyon and other places. The harpy eagles are destined for rainforests in South America. These are some juvenile condors that are still being raised till they get to full adult size, and those will be reintroduced into the wild. They have them on display till then. When we were there, unfortunately, they had an accident with some weather and had part of their roof blown off. So half of the facility was closed when we were there, so they did not charge us any admission. Yeah. Unfortunately, they weren't flying any birds at their amphitheater or anything like that as well because of the issues they were having. So condors are the largest wingspread bird in the world. They're 2.9 meters wingspread, and they weigh 17 to 22 pounds. That's a lot of fleshy bird there. They also have this amphitheater here. You can see all the seats built into the hillside, and they have 4 pillars here where the birds can sit, and that's where they fly the birds they use for educational purposes. They're ambassador birds, they call them. And here's a show with their bird handler holding one of their falcons or hawks there for the public. And also off the parking lot, there's a nice little botanical garden. I'm not going to bore you with all the wildflower pictures, but there's a little trail along the ridge that leads to a nice gazebo where it's got a nice, pergola roof where you can sit under there in the semi-shade. There are a few hawks flying for us there, and we got treated to a couple warthogs flying by. Some of the ugliest airplanes you're going to see. My sister has a friend whose son is actually in the Air National Guard and flies them. She was telling us they sometimes see them up there, and sure enough, they did a nice flyby. I didn't include the video, though, because it was going in and out of focus. We also had a flyover from a forest fire fighting plane, one of the water drop planes. There was some smoke rising over the hills to the west, and I went taking off over the airport right over our heads on the way there. So here's the little gazebo they have out there, and you're on a nice hill, and there's nice thermals there for all the hawks to ride on as they're doing their hunting during the day. It's almost 100 degrees that day in the middle of the desert there, and Boise never used to get that hot. It's really been suffering from climate change. And here's a nice shot of the three of us under the gazebo again. And they have a nice little sign in there printed with all the silhouettes of the different hawks of the area, so you can do some identification if you don't have any resources with you to do otherwise. And here's one of their condors being released into the wild. So you see they have name tags on them so they can identify the birds even after they're released. The ones in captivity in the cage all had numbered tags on them as well that didn't show up in the photo.
Do they put transmitters or GPS?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that's a lot of weight for a bird to be carrying. So that's why the number tags are very big on the wings so they can see them with binoculars from a distance. You know?
They make very small ones.
True. Actually, my company makes cases for transponders for tracking a lot of larger animals, from caribou up to elephants and stuff like that, the ones they hang on their neck bands. So, and okay, so more fun things to do in the area. We were an hour south of Boise, so now we're going to head 2 hours north along the highway to Payette Lake and the semi-resort town of McCall. It's a small town, but it's nice. So up on the north end of Payette Lake, there's a nice little place where you can rent canoes on the cheap and take a paddle in the lake or go up the Payette River. A 2-hour rental, I think, was like $15-20 or something like that. It was well worth the effort. Surprisingly, we only saw 2 other canoes. Everybody else rents paddle boards and or has their own stuff. Mm-hmm. They rent paddle boards there as well. A lot of people bring their dogs out there too. It's good water sports for them. Here you see someone with their dog on the front here. Seems like every other paddleboard we saw had a dog on. It was kind of bizarre. Some of them wet, some of them dry. And here's actually the landing where you rent the canoes. Out here is Payette Lake looking southward, and this is where the start of the Payette River is that leads into the north end. So there's actually a nice little botanical garden nestled in between some private property. I think it's maybe 2 acres total, entirely maintained by volunteers. No signage to get there. You have to know the house numbers going up the street and know which driveway to turn down to. It's only like a 10 parking spot lot, but it's incredible when you get there. It's really a gorgeous spot. That's my sister. We're walking through here, and this little blue person over there is the old lady who's taking care of it while we were there. She was laying some fertilizer down on the grass. But everything was in bloom. Irises, peonies, daylilies, columbines. They got a lot of fountains and sculptures and little paths wandering around through everything. And as a resort town, it sits on the southern edge of the lake. The lake has kind of like a flat southern end. And along the beachfront there, they have a whole bunch of resorts with docks for the rich and famous to go out on their boats from and go water skiing, whatever. So also some nice dining. We were having breakfast here on this day. A nice view of the lake. Here's some of the docks, all the jet ski ramps and all that kind of lifts and stuff, and little parking areas. Over here, coming up this side of the lake, is where Ponderosa State Park is, and there's a rise up this end where it goes to a nice overlook we'll be talking about later. So after breakfast, we went driving on the other side of the mountain ridge up to this nice little trailhead here to do an all uphill climb. It's less than a mile, 0.8 miles, but it is a good workout going up to these little twin lakes up here. Gorgeous, gorgeous scenery. So you can see there's a lot of burnt trees from previous wildfires. You know, it is a big fire area. They're fighting forest fires up there all the time.
Uphill both ways?
Yes, uphill both ways. The scenery is absolutely stunning. And here we're getting close to our objective. That's my daughter up walking in front of us. And here's the lake once you get to the top. Is absolutely stunning. We didn't see a single soul there. I think we saw one person walking back down the trail as we were walking up, and that was it. And all the little tadpoles were turning into frogs on the bank at a lake there. called Twin Lakes. I don't know if you saw on the map, there's a little constriction in the middle. In the dry season, it actually separates into two bodies of water. But it had been a fairly wet spring up there, so everything was looking good. So what do you do after a nice strenuous hike? You go for a nice bath, right? So there are 3 hot springs around the general area of there. I'd been to another one in a previous trip, which was basically just like a big Olympic-sized swimming pool with the water feeding into it and reeked of sulfur. Wasn't the most fun experience. But so we went to this one up a lot of dusty roads and beautiful, beautiful, well-maintained place owned privately by a family. Gold Fork Hot Springs. Highly recommend this. It doesn't reek of sulfur. It's water's filled with lithium for some reason. So that might be part of the reason why it's so relaxing. But here's where you register. It's like $10 to get in for up to 4 hours. They had to limit the time because too many people were coming with their little kids and families and going there the whole day. So it's not a theme park. So this is actually the 3rd swimming pool down. They have a string of pools, each one cooler than the rest. So most of the people hang out in this one. It's probably about 100 degrees in there. This is the big main pool, which is probably about 110. I spend most of my time in here, and there's a little pool up here where the fresh water comes out of the ground. That's about 115 degrees. And there's another pipe up here that fills this. It's an incredibly clean facility. They drain the whole thing every Monday and refill it, rather than having to do anything else like chlorinating or anything. So it's all scrubbed down. Actually, this gentleman here was giving me a little history. He has family in the area and comes up there 2 or 3 times a week to go for a good soak. So early in the week, it's its hottest, and it starts to cool down by the weekend before they drain it again. So if you like a really hot soak, go on a Tuesday. So this picture I had to get for Aaron. It is definitely cattle country up there. So a lot of beef farmers up there in what they call Round Valley and Long Valley, which is surrounded by the Boise National Forest just south of McCall there. But up in the foothills, they're building golf courses and subdivisions up there now too. So civilization is moving in. So who knows how long those northern mountains are going to be dark sky country. So Ponderosa State Park is also another place where the Boise Astronomical Society hosts star parties occasionally, but naturally, as you saw by the area, there's a lot of trees around. There's not that many open viewing areas. There's one around the Visitors Center. There's also an overlook with a steep winding drive to the top. I could imagine it's beautiful up there at night, but they closed the road at sunset. So if you want to go up there, it's like a mile all uphill, and it's a very dark road. And yeah, you're on your own for hoofing. I wouldn't want to have to bring equipment up there. But here is the view from the top. It's well worth it. McCall is all the way down here on the southern shore. This is the far side going up here. There's a highway up this side of Payette Lake and another highway coming up the far side. By highway, I mean a little dinky road. And this is going up towards the north end of the lake. Over here is some private housing. And way off on the edge over here is where the canoe rental place was. And you got some motorboats playing around in here. There was some osprey soaring around in the air, fishing at eye level. And another nice view to the south. Right here is actually where McCall is. And all the nice mountains running through the Cascade Ridge going up there on the west side of the river. And the highway goes through the Boise National Forest. It's amazing, like you see the sign going northward. It says Boise National Forest, and it goes from like scrub to instant tree line. Here's all the trees heading back southbound. Go a little farther down and hit the edge of the forest, and this is what it turns into immediately. A lot of it is, microclimate and water availability. So, and the edge is starting to move a little farther in from the border of the year now. And this brings us to the end of our journey, heading homeward. So I had some nice scenic clouds on the way. I thought this was a nice artistic shot, so I figured I'd take it. So I'd like to thank the Idaho Department of Parks and Recreation for having some great parks with a lot of fun and educational things to do. Bruneau Dunes Facebook page, which had a ton of photos. I recommend going there if you want to see all the wildlife that's there at Bruneau Dunes. There's a ton of reptiles and birds and waterfowl and other animals. And their Facebook page is filled with a lot of useful information. The Boise Astronomical Society for doing such great work, encouraging astronomy in the area. My sister for enduring me and my daughter for 9 days, and also for our club members for all their encouragement and support. And one last shot at the dunes. So, any questions?
Well done.
Great presentation.
Yes.
You said that the observatory is open on Friday and Saturday nights. Is it open, did you say if it was open year round or?
I think it's kind of like Jenny Jump. I think they're only open like April to October, but you'd have to check their website.
Yeah.
The campground is open year round. I know that. So you can still go do your own observing there in midwinter.
It gets cold in the winter out there.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of members,
What's that?
Boise.
I'm not really sure. Their website is pretty sparse on information. They don't even have a photo album page or anything like that. So don't really know much about them. Several dozen at least, It looked like there's about 50, 60 people showing up to these star parties every year.
Jim,
Yes.
did you bring equipment with you or?
No. I actually remember Aaron in a previous talk was talking about those little 2X AAI binoculars. I brought those with me. It's actually, I should have mentioned this in the talk. When we're at the observatory, the clouds were rolling in. I meant to include a picture of the clouds over the observatory, but there were little breaks in the clouds here and there. You could see Venus through the background. I was trying to tell them, move the dome 6 inches to the right and you'll get Venus, because it was pointed right at the dome. And I don't know, they were stubborn. They wouldn't do it. Then the clouds came back, no more Venus. So but it's a long walk back to the campground, not taking that little trail, because in the middle of the night with no lights, we didn't want to be walking in the middle of sand with all the little gopher holes and stuff like that. So as we were walking back, all the clouds disappeared. It was already 10:30 at night. My sister was driving her Sprinter camper, and it was all hooked up to the electric and water hookups at the campground, and she didn't want to unhook everything and drive back. But everything was crystal clear when we walked back to the campground. But so I took those little binoculars, and in a dark sky sight, they are truly amazing. I could see M13 at only 2x magnification. Sagittarius star cloud was amazing. I was trying to look for a few other things like M3 and M5. I couldn't quite make those out, but they really do a good job in a dark sky sight. In a place where it's a little bit light pollution, they're not very impressive. You need dark skies, and they really bring out all the little specks of light everywhere. Anything else?
Yeah, if you're there in the fall, Andromeda would have been great,
Oh, yeah,
but you would have had to wait till like 4 a.m. to get Andromeda.
pretty much, yeah. Well, the star party they have there it was just September 15th, 16th, and 17th, so they're probably getting some good views. A lot of people on their Facebook page were posting pictures of images they were taking through their telescopes, and how many photos of Andromeda can you see? That's why I didn't include them.
What month were you there?
I was there in mid-July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, not till 4, maybe 2.
yeah, it was hot as hell. Okay, if that is it, I will be shutting this down here.
Good show, Jeff.
Yeah, it looks beautiful out there.
Hey, Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
Why did you come back?
What's that?
Why did you come back?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
Tell you why.